Good afternoon. I wanted to talk to you today as somebody who has led health organisations in the UK. I've led hospitals. I led the creation of the largest primary care provider in the UK. I was a nurse a very, very, very long time ago. And more latterly, I was the Prime Minister's advisor on the NHS transformation, the UK healthcare system. So I'm going to talk to you about my reflections of healthcare reform, but from a very practical perspective. So practical perspective of somebody who has the scars of the last 36 years of trying to bring about change and work with people who are trying to bring about change. And having had the privilege of working both nationally and locally, delivering services, it is my belief that the lessons are the same. And it is also my belief that the lessons are the same irrespective of the country that you are in. So to start, irrespective of whether you are trying to lead national reform or local health service change, you go where the energy is. You go where the energy is with a group of people who are committed to and who want to make change. I had the privilege of leading a national programme where we were prototyping the future models of care for the NHS, and we got together a group of individuals across the country who wanted to work together in very similar models that you heard about today from Ribera Salud, working with primary and secondary care working together. Those individuals were led by doctors, the changes were led by the clinicians, and they were the ones that brought about the change. And you can read about the Vanguard programme, as it was then called, where we had a significant impact on the care that was delivered for patients, because it started with those individuals who had the energy and those individuals who wanted to make the changes that were required. It's also my belief that the smallest cog in the wheel can make a difference. We can talk about national scale reform, we can talk about strategy, we can talk about things that we want to do for a population of 60 million people as we have in the UK. Yet it is the smallest cog that will make the fundamental difference to how people feel healthcare is provided on a daily basis. In one of my hospitals, we had a programme where we met every morning at 8 o'clock and asked two questions. What can we do today to make a difference to the people that we serve? And are there any issues of patient safety? And we met every single day for 18 months. And the hardest job was stopping those people who have director in their title from making comments and from those individuals wanting to make the change. And I will never forget an individual porter, so somebody that really takes people to and from theatre, takes people to and from the outpatients, who came to this meeting and said, the coffins that we have to take people to the mortuary are not big enough. And we stood there and we listened to this individual where we'd been talking about strategy and we'd been talking about reform, and this individual knew the thing that made the biggest difference to both the individual and the families of that individual. The smallest thing makes the biggest difference. I don't know how about you, but certainly the way I am treated when I speak to somebody in healthcare makes a big difference. So at 8:30 in the morning, when I try and get my GP appointment, as we do here in the UK, if somebody answers that phone and says, "Good morning, Sam, how may I help you?" or if they say, "Hello, no, we don't have any appointments," it makes the biggest difference and the biggest thing that impacts on my journey in healthcare. So my second lesson is it's the smallest cog that can make the biggest difference in any change and any reform. My third reflection is that if you listen, my husband says he doesn't have his listening ears on. If you have your listening ears on, you can hear that people want to make the changes that are needed. So let me give you a very practical example. When we were leading this program, which we called Onion, at the hospital there as the chief executive, a junior doctor came to the meeting. 2 questions we asked every day. Are there any issues of patient safety? And what can I do today to make a difference to the people that we serve? This junior doctor came and said, could we have a blood gas machine on the 1st floor of the hospital? And I remember thinking, yes, obviously. Why? And he said, we don't have a blood gas machine. So what we do is we take the blood and then we run up 5 flights of stairs, hoping that the blood hasn't coagulated by the time you get to the top. It usually has, so we have to run back downstairs again and take more blood from the patients. When I asked why don't we have a blood gas machine on the 1st floor, the junior doctor said it costs £1,500 and we have been told we do not have enough money. We might not have enough money for a blood gas machine, but it costs an awful lot more money to keep that patient in hospital, to extend their length of stay, to increase the risk of infection. So the madness of we don't have any money. So if you ask the question and you listen, particularly to the staff who are delivering on a daily basis, we know they have the answers. And I remember having this conversation. I was previously the advisor to the Prime Minister. It doesn't matter whether you're the Prime Minister, it doesn't matter whether you are the nurse delivering. If you ask the question of the people who are delivering the services, they will tell you the answers. And our job in terms of reform is to implement and move those barriers out of the way. So some of the challenges associated with delivering reform. It's not always in the patient's best interest, the answers that come back. And you have to whisper it, because we always say everything we do is in the best interest of the patient. Well, sometimes the answer that you get is because of somebody's coming from at it with a different perspective. I don't know about in Portugal or in Spain or in France, but car parking spaces in the UK, you could have a very good market to sell a car parking space, because car parking spaces are at a premium. So when somebody's telling you they don't want something to happen and they don't want this change to happen, stripping back and understanding what they're really talking about usually is not about the thing that they first present. And I remember when we were in the early 90s trying to change the way we delivered the emergency care rota, and I was literally pulled into a cupboard by a very senior consultant doctor who said to me, I cannot do this rota, I cannot do this, I have not taken blood for a very long time. Yet it was the fact that he had the ability, okay, not in a cupboard to have this conversation, but was able to say he was scared of the changes that we were trying to implement. Yet if you'd asked him, that would not have been his first response. A very hard lesson that I have learned over the period of time is you don't have to take everyone with you at the same time. I have the scars that trying to get people, like a sheepdog who is trying to round up the sheep in a field, that is sometimes I have felt like that. And where my mistakes have been is actually not everybody goes at the same time. Not everybody wants to make those changes, and you don't have to keep those individuals working together all the time. You go where the energy is, and you go where the effort is. Those people will follow, and if they don't follow, they will follow eventually, but you don't have to take everybody with you at the same time, particularly if your reform is more challenging. Healthcare is a group of different professionals working together. And what comes with that are different cultures. So having run primary care services, I can tell you that in the UK, GPs are very different to orthopaedic surgeons, who are very different to haematologists, who are really different to intensivists. So if you're leading reform, if you're leading change, part of your job is to be a translator, and part of your job is to understand that different cultures are at work, and working across those cultures, whether you're working at a clinical team level, or indeed when I worked for Centene, the US health insurer, leading their UK operation, I spent a lot of time translating the US and the UK health system. So it doesn't matter where you are in terms of your sit in the system, whether it's local change or national, being a translator and understanding that cultural change underpins any type of reform and will stand or fall in the way of that change. Resilience is needed. Don't we all know it? How many years have we been talking about reform? How many years have we been trying to bring about this change? And it is hard, hard, hard work. So yes, you need the energy, but you also need the resilience to keep on going. We've been talking about integration in the UK as a policy and as a strategy for I can't remember how many years. We have had numerous white papers. We have 42 integrated care systems where you have everybody around working together, and yet we still haven't achieved the holy grail of integration. So you keep going and you keep going because you need that resilience to bring about any sort of reform. I just want to touch very briefly on things that were even more difficult. In the UK, the data ownership, your data, my data as a citizen, it's my data. But the GP, by law, is the data controller. So even if I have given permission for my data to be shared, I need the healthcare professional's permission for that to happen in practice, because by law, it is the data controller. And so understanding how we address that and how we manage some of the concerns, rightly some of the concerns around the clinicians, but ultimately, frankly, it's my data, and I'd like my data to be used in the way that I would like my data to be used. I heard Alberto this morning talk about alignment, and I could not agree more. If your financial incentives, or if your incentives are not aligned with the overall purpose and the overall strategy and overall reform, it'll be far, far, far harder. And we have a number of different financial models in the UK. We have an integrated care system, but we have hospitals that are paid differently to GPs, that are paid differently to community services. So the alignment of financial incentives or any type of incentives is crucial for any type of healthcare reform. However, I want to finish on a moment of hope. And we were talking earlier on today. So we have what we have described, we have the NHS app in the UK, and despite all the challenges around data, despite all the challenges about who owns the data, we have quiet reform happening here in the corner. And for those of you that have been able to do this for a number of years, bear with us. We're playing catch up here in the UK. So I can now access on my phone my data, if my GP says it's okay. I can make appointments. I can make appointments faster than I can do by phoning or trying to navigate some kind of healthcare system. And in the UK, 34 million interactions happen every month on the NHS app, which is still very clunky and still not quite as sexy or as exciting as something like Apple or Google. More than 3/4 of the adult population use the app. We have 14.5 million views of our healthcare records. So despite the challenges around data, we do have people who are able to access their healthcare data and actually be able to do it on their phone. In 2024, that's pretty exciting in the UK. In the UK, you also have something called 111, which is the urgent care process, where if you don't need A&E, you can phone 111. Over 20% of the UK urgent care activity now happens on the app. It's 9 times cheaper for the healthcare system to use it on the app, and it's 4 times faster for the individual. And the best thing about this is it's the reform that is happening led by citizens and supported by people in a national position. And I just want to leave you with something that a very, very wise person once said to me, which is, in healthcare, there will be a lot of noise. There's always noise. There will be a lot of demand. Demand will continue to rise. Those people that say demand will go down, they're not talking sense. Demand will continue to rise. The costs will continue to rise, but none of us have an unlimited budget. So our jobs, those people, whether we're designing the policy, we're leading healthcare reform, or we're implementing it, is to keep the focus on the North Star and keep the focus on what it is that we're here to try and achieve, which is better healthcare and improvements for people that use our services. Thank you.